Okay, one last thing is about vaccines. Okay, and exactly like what is a vaccine? What does it do? Why should you get them? Why are they important? Okay, what is a vaccine? So, a vaccine, usually what a vaccine includes is, sorry, I was looking for my black pen. Vaccines include the pathogen, but in a weaker version. Mostly what that means is like they take this virus and then they heat it or they degrade it chemically so that part of it is still present. Enough of it's still present that's going to cause an immune response, but it's not fully activated or at full strength, so it doesn't make you sick. That's what's happening. Okay. So we're gonna take this virus and like, yeah, we still have its spike proteins here on the ends, but somehow we've chopped up its DNA so it can't actually like, oh, let me do this differently. It will have DNA inside or RNA. Okay. And as we make it a vaccine, it will be empty on the inside instead. So what that means is it can't actually get into your body cells and use your body cells to create more viruses anymore. However, what is a good thing about this is it still has those antigens present on the surface. Okay. So what that means is what a vaccine does is it causes a primary response. That's exactly what's going to happen. So exactly what's happening during the primary response. Oh, all this that we did, okay? It activates your T lymphocytes, and what's really important here is you create memory cells. You create memory cells, memory T cells, okay? It activates your B cells. You create memory B cells and antibodies, okay? So you have this vaccine, and your body is gonna get sick a little bit because of that primary response. You release T cells, maybe T cells don't have anything to do because the virus is too weak to actually infect your body cells, but you release antibodies, and then the antibodies will help clear any of the antigens that get put in your body by the vaccine. Okay, that's exactly what's happening. So, how come a vaccine works then? So, you created all these memory cells, right? So I have this memory T cell, and I have some of these memory B cells, which I forgot to write memory. So again, they're going to have like the memory B cell has an antibody on its surface that recognizes that antigen from the vaccine. The same thing with the T cells, they have specific receptors on their surface. Okay. So when you get sick with the actual virus, now instead you get this actual virus in here, which does have its DNA or its RNA and can infect your body cells, you don't have to trigger the primary response anymore. So all that activation that we did, this activation takes, 10 days to ramp up production of antibodies, and it takes 10 days for you to ramp up production of like cytotoxic T cells, and part of this is helper T cells are needed to help you activate B cells. So because this is such a long process, you will be sick for, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks, up to 17 days in a primary response. If you get vaccinated and then you get infected or exposed, okay, you're going to have a secondary exposure. Now you're going to use these memory cells and you're going to bypass the primary response and hit your secondary response. So this is what's going to happen. So we're going to use our memory cells here. Now as our virus enters again, I don't have to use my antigen presenting cell. All I have to do is have my virus, sorry about my, whoa, crazy. Yeah, sorry about that craziness right there. okay? But all you're going to have is the virus now with its antigens actually binding directly to these memory cells. Then the memory cells are going to create helper T cells and more memory cells. And again, these memory cells are going to create cytotoxic T cells and more memory cells. But because you bypassed this activation process, it's only going to take you 2 or 3 days to ramp up enough production of helper T cells. The same thing's going to happen for our B cells over here. Instead of having to go through this complicated activation process, as soon as my antigen binds here, that's just going to cause me to create plasma cells and more memory cells, which means I can create antibodies. I'm going to abbreviate. I'm going to create those antibodies much quicker because I already had those memory cells present. This is why you're only sick for, maybe 2 or 3 days, a week at most, as opposed to if you've never seen that pathogen before, your body has to get used to it. I hate to say get used to it, but your body has to be trained on how to deal with it. Okay. Just like I said, if lymphocytes are like your SEAL Team 6 or your special forces, you have to train them on what is the enemy. And that's going to take time. But as soon as they know what that enemy is, it's going to be very easy to deploy them and get rid of that enemy because they've already been trained. And essentially, that's exactly what a vaccine is going to do. Okay. So you see that in like a normal exposure, it can take upwards of like 10 days for antibody production to be high enough for you to fight off all of the infection. If you get exposed the second time, you can see how your antibody production ramps up within like 3 days, so you're not sick as long. Okay, that is what immunizations or vaccinations do. They use your primary immune response, but because you're not given the full virus, then you don't have to worry about like an extreme exposure, okay? Whereas the secondary response will happen immediately. So hopefully that helps you guys.